Welcome to Lesson 3 of the Saying Intermediate Python class. In this class, we will learn all about the random library. Let's do a quick review. 1. What does the in operator do? Take a moment to think about this. Feel free to pause the video. We use the in operator to tell us if an element is in a list. For example, if we have a list with pizza, pear, and apple, we can check if pear is in the list by doing pear in list. Another question. How do I make a multi-line comment? Think about this one for a few moments and come back. We use triple quotes. For example, we can do, with triple quotation marks, a very long multi-line comment, just like this. Finally, what will be printed if I run the following code? Well, let's think about it. As you can see here, we have a variable called mylist. It starts out of being empty. Then we append a rat into our list, and finally we pop rat right back out of the list. So as our final answer, we have an empty list. Now let's answer our first question. How can we choose and use random values in our code? First, we want to import this library called random. This library contains a ton of functions that allow us to deal with random numbers, choosing random elements, and so on. We do this by doing import random, just like how you would do in English. Let's learn about our first function from random. We are going to learn about the random.randRange function. This code on screen shows us calling the random.randRange function with the values 1 and 11. This allows us to find a random whole number between 1 and 10 inclusive. So to clarify, that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, or 10. Not the number 11, because similar to the range function, we are going to exclude the last element, or 11. Now let's learn about how to make a random decimal number. So we know that we can use random.randRange to get a random whole number, but what about decimals? Well, we can use the random.random function to get a decimal. As you can see in this code, if we call random.random, we get a decimal between 0 and 1. In this case, it would be 0.222928, and so on. Next, we can get a random decimal between A and B by using random.uniform. Now, as a note, we usually do not use these functions, but they're useful to have in your toolbox. Great, let's do some very quick review. First, what is the code for getting a random number between 10 and 14 inclusive? Take a moment to think about this. We use the randRange function, and we specify between 10 and 15 because we are excluding the last element. Second, what are we importing when we type import random? We are importing a library. Third, what are all the numbers that the following print statement will output? And as you can see, we have a print statement of random.randRange from 1 to 8. And we want to find all the possible numbers. The possible numbers are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Notice again how the number 8 is not included. Let's do a quick exercise. This is going to be the dice game exercise. We are going to make an online dice roller that chooses a number between 1 and 6. It should print out following when run, which is your random dice roll gave the value of, and then the number or the value. If the dice is even, so that'd be 2, 4, and 6, print out you win. And if it's odd, print out you lose. Take a moment to implement this, and if you need some help, there are a few hints at the bottom. As a challenge, use the input function to let the user decide how many sides the die will have. And as another challenge, use a while loop to let the user re-roll the die. Take a moment and pause this video and try out this exercise by yourself, then come back if you need help. Okay, ready to come back? Let's take a look. Our basic dice game is essentially choosing a random number between 1 and 6. So we will use the random.randrange function. Again, I will emphasize that we are doing randrange between 1 and 7, but we do not include the number 7. So the range is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Notice in the fourth line, we are using dice roll modulo 2 is equal to 0. This is essentially a fancy way of telling us what the remainder of this division is. So modulo is essentially doing division, then giving us the remainder. In this case, let's say dice roll is 6. We're going to divide it by 2, which gives us 3, and our remainder is 0. So we would print out you win. Great. Now let's look at another exercise. Let's make a game with a 90% chance of printing out nothing and a 10% chance of printing out you get a cookie. As a hint, use the random.random function since the result will be a random number between 0 and 1. Take a few minutes to implement this code, and if you need help or are done, come back and check out our solution. Okay, ready to come back? Let's look at the answer. For our basic code, we simply use the random.random function. In order to check if it is a 10% chance, we are going to check if the result of random.random is less than 0.1. The reason why this works is random.random gives us a value between 0 and 1. And 10% of 1 is going to be 0.1. Great, let's continue on. So we learned all about how to choose random numbers. But what about with lists? How can we select a random item from a list? Another function that we can use from the random library is called random.choice, as you can see in this code demonstrated below. In this code, we create a list with 4 elements, and we use random.choice to choose an element from this list. Take a moment and think about why we might need random elements from a list in our Jackson Pollock project. As a hint, think back to lesson 1, when we created our list of colors and shapes. Ready to move on? Let's try to name these 3 random our own, then explain what they do. If you need any more help or forget what these functions are for, rewind the video and take a look at some of the previous slides. Let's look at some more examples about how each of these 3 random functions can be used. For our first example, we have 5 classes: history, math, English, science, and PE. Then we will use random.choice to choose a random class that this student will have as their first period. As you can see, we type the function random.choice and pass the list classes as an argument. An example of what we could have as an output is you will have first period. Now let's look at a second example. Again, we will be using the random.choice function, except this time we're looking at the traits of Nate, Nico, and Daniel. So we have 3 traits: cool, awesome, and smart, and we're choosing a random one. So an example of what could be output is Nate, Nico, and Daniel are smart. Now let's take some time and do a more complicated activity. Let's make a program that prints a random card from a deck of standard cards. If you don't know, a deck of cards essentially has 52 cards, and these are composed of ace, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, jack, queen, and king, which are our card numbers, and a suit, which are spades, hearts, diamonds, clubs. We want to output king of spades, 3 of hearts, or just any other card. So notice we are choosing one number and one suit. How can we do this? Take a moment and implement it on your own. Feel free to pause the video. All right, ready to check over your answer? Let's take a look. Here we define a list of numbers, which is ace, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, jack, queen, and king. And we have our 4 suits as well: spades, hearts, diamonds, clubs. With these 2 lists, we can call random.choice in order to choose a random element from one list. Great, now that we familiarized ourselves with the random function, let's do step 3 of our Jackson Pollock project. We are going to generate integers to randomize our location, movement, distance, and direction. So we would use random.choice to select colors and shapes from our list, and we are going to use random.randRange to select random locations on our canvas. Take a moment to implement this in your code. Okay, great. That's it for this lesson. In this lesson, you learned how to import the random library, use random functions, such as generating random integers between a range, generating random decimals between a range, choosing a random element list. Great job! Please take a look at our next video, which is lesson 4 of this Python series, where we will go even further into completing our Jackson Pollock project.